So I've been playing MAKEN SHAO. Oh, yeah. This went on for quite a while. MAKEN SHAO follows the tale of Maken X, a Dreamcast game that I can't play because DC emulation sucks dick on lower end PCs, and fuck if I know how to record anything that doesn't use components. Well, there is a way to do it, which I'll definitely look into later for Shenmue reasons, but shut up. This is what we're going with. The abjectly inferior port in which they turned a first-person action game into a third-person action game and then proceeded to nuke all of its Nazi-related imagery. Thing is that Maken X was originally a game about war. The EU was falling apart.
Poignant.
Relations between the US and China were deteriorating.
Also poignant.
And here to save us from the now mysteriously absent Nazi threat was a deformed metapod called Maken.
But bro, the fuck is this retarded burnt victim looking ass banana going to do?
Well, it's a bit unclear. He can transform into a sword, which is a good start, but then he can also fuse together with humans, and as a result, the sword he turns into is rarely ever used. Not that it matters, as the Nazis invade the research facility he was kept in and murder kill just about everyone except a young teenage girl named Kay, her brother, generic unremarkable senpai-chan, and a bunch of deadbeat emo scientists who wouldn't look out of place in a fucking Marilyn Manson video. In a vain attempt to not fuck shit up though, they activate the Maken prematurely, and it ends up fusing together with poor unassuming Kay, who then uses this opportunity to avenge the death of her father. If it weren't for the fact that she's forced to save the world by way of taking over random people's bodies and endless inner monologuing. So yeah, I'm not gonna fucking lie, this game is a bit of an anomaly to me. I mean, it's still in its original Japanese, which is rare but fine, but in some sick, bizarre nipple twist of fate, said Japanese voice acting is a bit very fucking shit. All characters just sound incredibly disinterested, and even the recording quality and the audio compression suck floppy cocks. I guess we all have to start somewhere, and this was clearly a very early attempt at cinematic storytelling on Atlus's part. Mediocre anime vibes inbound. Though for its time, I can imagine it to be somewhat impressive, and it's also not anywhere near bad enough to where I wasn't able to set aside the awkwardness. Especially when the game introduces wireframe world maps. Ooh, my fetish! I'm never doing that again. From here, you're asked to pick a level and are then expected to awkwardly hack and slash your way through corridor after corridor, fighting just about the same 5 enemy types for the entire game. In a move that's as much fitting as it is equally questionable, MAKEN SHAO has tank controls, thus forcing you to either lock onto an enemy in order to auto-strafe around them by pressing L1 or by holding down circle when not locked on. And while doing either or both, one's able to quickly dodge by jumping sideways and guard using R1, and literally all attacks are mapped to the square button. So, it's absurdly basic to say the least, and that's not even going into how awkward it can be to have 2 separate types of strafing and dodging that don't mix well given the button layout, and with how fucking stiff the overall game feel is. Luckily, they do give you some very basic combos like square 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 or forward back square or hold down square. And following up a successful dodge with a quick parry means that you can stagger your enemies, essentially breaking their guard. Plus, the various corridors will come along with some health items and temporary stat boosts hidden away in breakable crates, but then they only allow you to hold one item at a time, so that's also a mechanic, I guess. And there are enemies that are built around your very limited moveset, like projectile-based dudes that need to be doomed around, and these big guys that need to be parried before being eligible for a swift beating. Now, while all of these additions do actually add to the "hey, this is almost a game" vibes MAKEN SHAO was dripping all over its dissatisfied face, a brawler like this still won't be anywhere without a gimmick to call its very own. The Bouncer has the floppy juggling, Godhand had the make him yourself combos, and MAKEN SHAO has the whole body swapping situation that it aptly refers to as brain jacking.
Oh come on baby. Jack my brain. Jack it real hard.
Whenever you kill a bitch, you'll be rewarded with image points. These count as a type of currency, as swapping your gunked up funk for someone else's junk don't come free. Typically though, the story kinda dictates who and when you play as, but you can always switch back to previously used bodies on the level select screen given that you have the funds. At the very least, the brainjacking creates some mild variety game feel-wise. At one point, you might find yourself controlling a crazy Nazi powerhouse, and the next you could be trapped inside of a lowly engineer who can't fight for shit. Though, in both cases, you will be able to get stronger, as when you use a body more often, you'll increase their sync rate, unlocking new combos in the process. And where all of this would have been really fucking cool if the game were actually designed well, it regrettably isn't.
MAKEN Deus Ex Machina.
Standing out like a cyst on your bellend is how the lock-on feels to lock onto things even so much as a couple of meters away. Nor are you in any way able to choose which one of the many dudes you'll end up locking onto. This isn't necessarily a problem on its own, but when you consider how much shit the game throws at you, it most definitely is. In the first couple of levels, you won't be fighting much more than 3, maybe 4 people at a time. Which is fine, and I was even having a little bit of fun. But not so much level 5 onward though. As I mentioned before, you automatically strafe while locked on, but are required to hold down circle when walking freely. So, when you have 2 guys shooting projectiles that are too far away to be locked on to, and about 8 guys coming at you, one requiring a parry and the other needing a backstab and so on, you're likely to get completely mullered because of the abject confusion caused by having to keep up with 2 types of sidestepping, guarding, and the FOV being an absolute douche as well. Hell, doing the Doom alone is awkward enough as it is, as it's actually quite hard to coordinate your jumps when the projectile isn't coming at you from straight ahead. It's just bad game design, really. Which is amplified by the tightest corridors this side of Final Fantasy XIII's filled level concepts. Keeping with the theme of gradually getting worse, MAKEN SHAO also has some really cleverly designed puzzles that spice up the frustrating monotony. Initially, shit's down to simply flipping a switch, but in level 4 they introduce these cunts, who you need to plop down onto some pressure plates to open doors somehow. Now, don't misunderstand, it's a novel concept that I could easily see working in, say, a Zelda game, but this is not a fucking Zelda game. So they make you guide them around the place with the best camera, all the while avoiding getting hit, cause remember, health items and your usage of them is rather limited, and praying to fuck that their gargantuanly cuntish pathing doesn't get them horribly stuck somewhere, which of course can only lead to them getting horribly stuck somewhere. Mainly behind this set of stairs that you need them to climb because it just wasn't fun enough. Seriously, it starts off bad, but on the second incarnation of this fuckfest, they include shit like dummy holes and different levels of elevation, and before I knew it, I was listening to for a solid 20 minutes. To the game's credit though, the bosses are kinda cool as they do decent amounts of damage and have simple but neat little patterns you need to learn in order to dodge and parry properly. If I could compare it to anything, I'd say that they're a bit like 3D Mega Man bosses, only then with extra What is definitely a bit of a shame though is that MAKEN is in dire need of a better checkpoint system. Like, most stages only have one save point, if any at all, and the only options you get upon death are load save or start from world map. And the level can take anywhere from 10 minutes to about 25. So either way, it means having to replay a sizable chunk of fuck upon death. And as shit goes on, the level design will become increasingly cancerous with the previously mentioned spam edges and lock-on issues, random platforming segments, hellish puzzles, unskippable cutscenes, and enemies with broken as fuck invincibility windows and or unavoidable attacks. Which does make beating a level pretty rewarding, I guess, but it's just not worth suffering through the brokenness that is MAKEN SHAO. Believe it or not, but I do actually like the game's mediocre anime vibes. Back when I was a teenager, I always used to watch anime on those shitty watch anime online websites, and where I ended up finding a lot of surprisingly good shit like Noir and Arakawa Under the Bridge, there was also lots and lots of mediocre, low-budget, poorly animated trash. But Even among the hack signs, there was a passion, a real love for the medium, or at least that's what I felt while watching. And MAKEN SHAO reminded me a lot of this. The hazy dream sequences, the supernatural undertones, the static facial animations, and the badly compressed FMV with audio errors made it feel like I was watching the game on a totally not ad space infested hellhole with a totally not crappy media player. And for what it's worth, I do also genuinely believe that there's a good story in here somewhere. I mean, it's an Atlus joint, and that's just kind of what they do. It might take a while before it picks up the pace, but seeing our protagonist Gay struggle with the morality behind the brainjacking, being that it kills the host that it leaves behind, is rather intriguing in a way. And if that wasn't enough, she's also lost control of her own body, as the Maken has relegated her to the anime brain zone, forcing her to inner monologue all day long. It may all be a bit weird, but when given the time, these dilemmas, along with the long, comfy Dreamcasty cutscenes, make for an oddly enjoyable story. But still, as it is, MAKEN SHAO is not very good. The gameplay goes from mediocre but fun to straight up terrible after the first 2 hours or so, and from what I've heard, MAKEN X is a much better title in every single way. Not only is it fully translated, dubbed, and localized properly, but the gameplay is also entirely different. So hopefully it won't contain shit like this.
It is funny, because it implied it went on for the entire duration of this video. What an epic joke. Ha, ha.